Well, hi again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. And today, once again, we have the sports page with Bob Case, and we do not have anything to do with football. It's not 100 yards of football, but this will be 330 feet of baseball, if you will. Bob Case is the host here of the sports page. Bob brings some of the most unique guests we've ever had, and we want to thank him for that. First and foremost, Bob, 24 years our guest played in the National Football. 24 years. Are you kidding me? That's almost a lifetime. He's got his he's got his ability to drink beer. He's an adult, right? He does all that things just based on that. But we want to thank you for bringing Rick Dempsey to the show.
Yeah, it's my honor, and I'm so glad Rick could make this. He's one of my all-time favorites. Having grown up playing American Legion in high school, I was a catcher. I can really appreciate the position. And if there was ever a guru of catchers, it's Rick Dempsey. Because we used to have coffee, and I'd see him at Starbucks, and every time I'd walk up, I said my knees started hurting because this guy played 24 years in the big leagues, not in semi-pro ball, in the big leagues as a catcher. Unheard of. It's unheard of. And what a great career he had, and he's, I knew of him when he was at Crosby High School. I'd heard about him and everything, because I knew he was Irish and I'm Irish, so I kind of followed him. But the bottom line is he's just a great human being. He accomplished so many things, from being the MVP in the 1983 World Series to catching the last out for Earl Hershiser in the 1988 World Series for the Dodgers. Just an amazing career. 2 world championships. And I found out some great things. Dean Chance was my guy that got me into the boxing business and all that stuff. And Dean was one of my best friends for my whole life. And one day we're talking with Rick, and Rick says, "Yeah, Dean Chance was with the Minnesota Twins when I broke in 1969."
That's right.
And he said he took him out up in Seattle, he and his wife out for dinner. And it's funny that Rick would still remember that from his rookie year. And I thought to myself, that's Dean Chance. But what a great story to hear that, that he would remember that. And the guys he played with, Harper, I'm going to let you. Harper was rattling off just the guys on the Twins he played with, all the Orioles, the this, to that. So, we could talk for 12 hours about this guy's career, but I'm going to let you go ahead and ask him the questions because you're really good at bringing up all the stuff. But Rick, I'm honored to be here with you. And
thank you, Bob.
I live on a private golf course, North Ranch Country Club, which is a very exclusive golf course. And this guy was the club champion. He's a scratch golfer. And also he was a radio announcer for the Baltimore Orioles for 15 years. He's done about everything you can do. So that's why we're going to have some fun today. I'm looking forward to it.
Good.
Well, born on September 13th, 1949, John Ricard Dempsey in Fayetteville, Tennessee. Who would have thought that a small little town like that would produce a guy that would know so many different people? I'm going to picture the courthouse, Rick. You were about 5 or 6 years old when you moved from there. Anything about the Tennessee experience that you remember? Did you start playing ball back then?
Well, no, I wasn't playing baseball back then. I was really young and wasn't old enough to play Little League ball yet, but I absolutely loved Tennessee and Fayetteville because I got to stay at my grandfather and grandmother's house, and they had streams all the time, and I could go fishing anytime I wanted. Actually, my oldest brother, who was Tom at the time, who was only like 12 years old, was driving the truck out to my grandfather's gas station and 5 and dime store while we were there. It was just a really cool life for any young kid to grow up who enjoyed the outdoors like I did. My grandparents had every kind of animal on the farm you could imagine: sheep, horses. They trained horses, and tobacco and everything they did. He was a man that did just about everything, in the town. He owned the 5 and dime store, and he owned the gasoline station, and everybody would collect there during the course of the day and just sit around and talk and roll their own cigarettes and sit there and smoke. And all I did, I went down to the creek and and did everything I can trying to catch snapping turtles, not realizing they'd take your hand off if you got to, you didn't hold them the right way. But anyway, I love Tennessee, but I mean, I also enjoy when I moved out to California because then, 8 years old, I started playing Little League baseball, and I fell in love with that. And in the old days, the parents used to take you to the drive-in movie theaters, and you'd park your car up on a little hump, and then you'd watch a double matinee, and in between they'd have Dodger highlights. And I remember that when I was standing on the front seat with my mom and dad, I turned over to my mom and said, "Mom, I'm going to be a professional baseball player. That's what I want to do. I love baseball." And fortunately, God was listening and took me in the right direction. And that's exactly what I managed to accomplish.
Your mom probably patted you on the head and said, "Oh, I love you, son. Go over to the swings and go play. We're going to watch a movie."
Exactly.
But
You were exactly right. I went out and got on the swings for a while until the baseball highlights started, and I run back into the car to listen.
We've had Ron Say on the show, and Ron said, a lot of tennis balls, not the new ones. You take an old tennis ball with no fuzz on it, and you get a nice little curveball with that, or wiffle ball. Or for some kids, it's stick ball in the street playing with the wrong end of a broom. Yeah. What was it like for you when you first started playing, Rick?
No, that's right. I mean, we did it all. We'd play hit the bat. You throw the ball up, you hit it out of there, and then wherever that guy caught the ball, he had to roll the ball down the street. And if it hit the bat and popped up in the air, you had to catch it. Otherwise, you lost your turn at bat. So we did all. We had. In the back of my yard, my dad brought the tractor home. He was a swimming pool contractor for quite a while, and he brought the tractor home and leveled out some space for us. And we made a little ballpark, and we started playing softball, and then softball became hardball, when Little League started, and that's just what I fell in love with.
What about basketball or football or hockey or anything else? Tell me, was there anything you didn't try when you were a kid?
Well, football, I wanted to play football every year at Crespi High School, but my dad was there on opening day for the signups every year to make sure I didn't play pro football. I mean, high school football.
Okay.
He says, "You're way too small. I don't want to see you get hurt. If you want to play baseball, you got to make a choice here which way you want to go." So I said, "I'd rather play baseball." So he says, "Okay, you cannot play football because you will definitely get broken in two." I was pretty small. It was probably when the scouts came to get me when I was graduating high school. I was living in Simi Valley for a little time with my mom and dad. It's about 40 minutes from school, and when I left the room, they told my mom, "Don't change the furniture around in his room. He's only going to be there for 2 weeks because he's way too small and he'll never make it." So I never let that bother me. And I said, "Well, I'll show him a thing or two and we'll see," because I did. I signed out of high school as a professional catcher at 145 pounds. Your left leg probably weighs 145 pounds, doesn't it? So,
yeah. Well, I think in the Deep South, you had some growing to do, right? But you were in California by that time, 145. But Crespi would later, just a few years later, Randy Cross, Super Bowl champion, was there. Paul Makowski. They had a Olympic caliber pole vaulter. What were the Sullivans' names? They had several of them that were there. But Crespi Carmelite High School was a good place for you to learn how to play baseball, obviously. And they didn't even have a field on campus. You had to go about 3 or 4 miles away to Balboa Park to play baseball, didn't you?
That's why I couldn't play my freshman and sophomore year, because my brother was probably the number 2 best high hurdler in the San Fernando Valley at that time. And track was his thing. So I had to go out for track. And until I got my driver's license, I couldn't play baseball because it was over at Balboa Park, which was about 3 miles away. So if I wanted to ride home at night, I had to go run track. So I started running long distance, which really turned out to be the biggest part of my workout program that kept me in the major leagues for actually in pro ball for 27 years. Wow. And I was a miler. I became a miler, and we had one of the best track coaches in all of California. Bill Leeds was his name. And I ran a 4:30 mile when I was a sophomore in high school and a 2:05 half mile. So
Wow.
I could run long distance because I always ran to my girlfriend's house, who's now my wife of 56 years.
Well, let's keep that on the QT, okay? I'm sure you ran really fast to get there, and you probably walked home because you didn't want to leave. But 4:30, that's what, 15 years old? That's a great time.
I guess it was about that time. Yeah, 15. Yeah, my sophomore year, I was 15 years old because my junior year, I turned 16. Right. I graduated at 17.
Rick, most people say, I hate running. That's the last thing I want to do. But you learned to run first, and then it wasn't a big deal if you had to run a lap after practice or anything, right? That was
you get used to it after a while. I mean, nobody likes to run, especially when you're not used to it. But I was not a very good runner in 8th grade, and I figured if I want to play baseball or something, I better get into that program. Everybody suggested that I run long distance, so I tried it, and I was pretty good at it. I can't say that I really was in love with it, running long distance, but after a while, when I realized I could run really good times, and I got a good feel for it, when to push myself and when to back off and that kind of thing, and then save a little for the kick and all that. So when I ran that 4:36 or 4:30 mile the first time, then they started talking about, oh, by the time he's a senior, he'll be close to the 4-minute mark. And I said, I don't think I'm ever going to make the 4-minute mark because I'm going out for baseball the minute I get my driver's license. And so that's when I finally got to play. I played in right field for Crespi at my junior year, and then I got an opportunity to catch my senior year. And that's what I fell in love with. I wanted to be a catcher.
I'm thinking a right fielder, the strength of your arm has something to do with that. And does that transition to your catching? Is that something that was just a natural for you, your arm strength, and then your footwork, learning a new position between your junior and senior year? That's not easy for anybody, but it must have been easier for you. What was the transition like? And what did you need to know in order to say to yourself, I'm pretty good at this, I can play this position?
Well, my dad always said, get your arm up. Get your arm up when you make a throw. And so I did that, and it felt good. And I was able to throw better than most of the kids that I played with. There were a couple guys out there, that had pretty good arms. But I think I kind of got better and better at it. My dad at that time was a swimming pool contractor, and I was in the swimming pool swimming all the time. That exercise by itself can really strengthen your rotor cuff. And so it just kept developing all the time. I had a pretty darn good arm in high school, could shut down the running game whenever they were trying to steal.
Sure.
That's what I think the scouts saw, first of all, because I also played in a semi-professional league around Los Angeles for the Minnesota Twins. And Jesse Flores, who was the manager of our team, he promoted me with the Minnesota Twins, but nobody really wanted to sign me because I was too small. But I had a pretty good arm, and I was a pretty good hitter. I think in high school I hit 600, just a little bit better than 600, and so I got a few looks in semi-pro area when I got scouted, and fortunately, when I signed at 17 years old, Minnesota sent me off to a short season in Florida, and it was less than 2 months, and we got to catch half a game every other day, which was basically nothing. But hey, I was still in a pro uniform. And then the next year, I was sent to Wisconsin.
Hold on, Rick. Hold on. Wait a second. You can't just let me slide by with you saying you hit 600 in high school. Yeah. And this isn't just, this isn't Fayetteville, Tennessee, where there's only one other high school within 100 miles. This is in the San Fernando Valley. You've got Taft and Canoga Park, and you've got Reseda. You've got city schools that are not that far. San Fernando. You go Crespi, so you're playing Notre Dame and Loyola. You've got probably St. Francis. You've got some other competition around that any scout and their brother would go, he's not just hitting 600 against some schmoes. He's going against some of the better. It's not necessarily all the best, but some really doggone good talent that you're going against every week. And you're hitting 600 and you're just casually going, yeah. And then I played semi-pro and then I did this. Are you kidding me?
I did not even know at that time that 300 was a good batting average. I went up there to get a hit every single time.
So you weren't good at math, is what you were saying. Math and then logic. We needed to work on that.
That was the only class I passed was math. I didn't pass any other one.
All right.
But 600, even after I signed as a professional and went to the major leagues, I was around some of the best hitters that baseball had. Rod Carew, Tony Oliva, all of these guys like that were Harmon Killebrew. These were big home run hitters. And Harmon hit 50 home runs every year and hit right at 300 every single year. Rod Carew, he was always more than that. He was always pushing the envelope to be the first batter to hit 400. He had 8 batting titles.
Yeah.
And he was an incredible hitter.
Yeah. It was a bad year for Rod to go 352, right? That's a bad year for him because he was going 360 some of these years and 370.
You're right.
Unbelievable how good he was at putting the bat on the ball. And these are rookie guys. Okay, I went too fast for you. Your senior year, when did people start looking at you? When was somebody from Minnesota come by and so, I know you're a little guy, but we think you can play?
Well, there wasn't a lot of people. I know San Francisco had some scouts around us was playing semi-pro ball, but I think the only team, and I think Jesse Flores, who was one of the best scouts around California, he liked me because I was always there on time every weekend to play Saturday and Sunday, double headers on Sundays. And I think he just thought I had enough desire to be on time, to be in good shape. And when I came, I played 100% all the time. And so he gave me an opportunity and it worked out.
Man. And it doesn't hurt that you get 2 hits every day when everyone else is getting 1.
Well, 2 was just an okay day.
Hey, Rick, did Jesse Flores sign you? Is he the guy that actually signed you?
Yes. Yeah, Jesse did, and I went off to play, and then I didn't play semi-pro ball anymore after that. So, Minnesota they didn't play me in my first summer league. We got a half a game every other day, and I might have got a at bat if I wasn't in the right spot when they put me in the order. My second year, I went to Wisconsin Rapids, and I wasn't playing at all there, so I asked the manager if he would call the big club and send me someplace where I could play. And so we got along well because I was pretty focused and I gave 100% all the time. So he was in my corner. They sent me to the NYP League where I played every day. I ended up being the most valuable player of the league, driving in 61 runs in 60 games. So, and 7 home runs, and all of them were hit to right field. So I didn't realize it back then, but hitting a home run to the opposite field was a pretty impressive thing for any player. So that's when I started to get a little look-see by the organization, because the following year I went back to Wisconsin Rapids and I hit 365. Not knowing 300 was still a good batting average, I was just okay with it. And all of a sudden, the Minnesota Twins were forced to put me on the 40-man roster because they were afraid that some other team would pick me up and go somewhere. That's all they had to do was claim me, and it was over. When I got on the 40-man roster, I got called to the big leagues. And that's where I met Billy Martin for the first time. He gave me an opportunity to play a little bit here and there and pinch hit. I hit 500, which was 3 for 6. But I think what Billy liked the most was the fact that a couple of those hits came on hit and runs because I could step away from home plate and shoot the ball down the right field line, which is something that not very many people could do. But I had a nice feel for hitting right then. So I saw the ball out of the pitcher's hand, which I think was one of the biggest reasons why I was a good hitter early on. And I always just tried to hit the ball up the middle. I learned that from when John Becker was throwing batting practice to me in high school. He had no screen in front of him on the mound. So I always tried to hit line drives right back at him. And you develop a pretty good swing when you do that. And anytime a manager wanted me to go the opposite way and move runners over, I was always capable of doing it on just about any pitch that they threw up there. So I hit 500 my first year and 304 when they called me up in my second year. And I ended up getting traded to the New York Yankees. But, so I learned a few things, from watching the great hitters like Rod Carew, who was a lot like Tony Gwynn. When the bat came through, the hands were back, and you led with the left hand, but you never used your right hand. You just laid the head of the bat on the ball. And a lot of times they wanted you to hit the ball the opposite way to move runners over, and, hit and runs. A guy always goes to third base if you can hit it down the right field line. So I stepped away and boom. And I was hitting major league guys, didn't realize, how good they really were. But if they left it just a little bit up or a little bit out, I had my base hits the opposite way. So I hit really well until I met Earl Weaver.
Well, hold on a second. We're gonna miss on a few things. You mentioned so much there. Billy Martin is your manager, and he was only there for 1 year, right? The '69 season. Then he got fired, and then who was it?
Frank Quillisi?
Bill Rigney? Did he take
Bill
over?
Rigney.
Yeah,
Bill Rigney was the guy. Yeah.
But
you like Bill Rigney?
Go ahead, Bob. Go ahead.
No, I said, did you like Bill Rigney, Rick?
Yeah, I liked him. He wasn't as much fun. He was a good manager as far as I knew. What did I know? But Billy Martin was fiery, and he would get on the ball club if we weren't playing well, weren't playing good defense and everything. And I kind of liked that because, there still wasn't anybody at the major league level that could outrun me. There was nobody who could do that. And, so Billy always appreciated that I was in good shape, never hurt, could throw, a little bit erratic in those Minnesota days. I know I hit a relief pitcher right in the rear end one time. I put a pretty good bruise on his butt. So, but
tell me something here, Rick, if you don't mind. Your senior year, you go from right field to catcher.
Mm-hmm.
2 years later, you're playing for the Minnesota Twins. What type of technique did you have? No one had coached you up. You had just started playing the position. How on earth did you work on your right, left, right, your arm strength, your accuracy, all the things, how to play call, how to frame, how did you do all of that in such a short amount of time and go from a high school to playing in the big leagues as quickly as you did without a whole lot of folks, I would imagine, instructing you? Or was it because nobody had messed me up? I just learned how to do it. Hey, be quicker with your feet. And guess what? I am, and I did it. Next thing you know, hey, we need to move this guy up.
Yeah. Well, I naturally just had a good throwing motion. And I think it came from my father that said, get your arm up. And when I did get my arm up, I was able to throw the ball. You could hear it come off your fingertips like a whip snapping.
There's a little sizzle. There's a sound that it makes.
And I said, hey, I was lucky that I had a little bit of instruction. It's the only thing my dad ever said to me about baseball was get your arm up when you throw. Okay. And I just developed and kept working on the release point. How hard do you have to hold the baseball before you let it go? You have to have a good loose feel. So I would just practice catching the ball and making the exchange, and then going through the motions like that. And I developed a pretty good arm. And so nobody else was throwing any better than I was at that time. So I felt like, well, maybe I'm on the right track, So
Can I ask you a catcher question? There are times during that transfer where it goes from your glove into your hand and you don't get the laces exactly the way that you want to. Did you learn to throw or release the ball with a different type of finger when you point down? If you got the laces right on top,
see,
right?
when you have a two-seam grip right there, that makes the ball move. You always want to feel for a four-seam grip.
Okay.
That's the four-seam grip, but you got to have your fingers on the tread. So you're a little short of the tread. Yeah. Anytime you could feel one of those treads, I could get it over the top and on its way to second base, against anybody. We had a lot of good base stealers in those days. A lot of it has to do, Harper, with the footwork. I never stopped working at, and I think this is a mistake that all Major League Baseball players in the game today make, is that they don't realize that spring training you have 30 games. During the season, 162. That's 192 games. Playoff situation could be anywhere from 15 to 20 games to go, to win your division, to win, the league that you're in, and then play and win a World Series championship. You can play over 215 games. They don't do this and have never done it. Soon as you get home, you have one day to unpack and get into your winter workouts. And that's what I always did. I had a long distance workout, a medium distance workout, and a speed workout. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday were fire break roads from Agora High School all the way to Westlake Boulevard and back. That was almost 7 miles. So I did the fire break roads. The only person that I ever heard of that ever did that was Jerry Rice.
Thank you.
And you probably played with him, didn't you?
I sure did. And I played against him. I didn't play with him, but I know what you're talking about.
Road.
That San Francisco, right there, Marin County, where you're ups and down, and he'd bring other pros with him, and they just tank. They couldn't keep up with man.
You got to be used to it. It isn't that they couldn't do it; it's just they weren't used to doing it.
They weren't used to it. You're right.
And you know what? They probably had areas where they were stronger from weightlifting and football. See, weightlifting and baseball, you have to be real careful, especially building your chest. And if you get real tight in your shoulders, then you lose that elasticity, that whip that I'm talking about, where you get that pop at the end. When you let it go, you hear it snap, boom, and it's on its way to second base. Well, maybe I just accidentally did everything the right way, and then working on my footwork. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you had the long distance workouts from high school to Westlake and back again. Then on Tuesdays, repeat quarters, 4 miles of quarters, which is one time around the track in 1 minute and 30 seconds with 2 minutes rest in between.
Okay.
That was your workout on Tuesdays. On Thursdays, I had speed workouts, which was 3 miles of 220s. That's full out, halfway around the track, 2 minutes rest in between there at the same time. So I kept that up for like 37 years, 40 years. I did it.
Harper, I used to see him walking around Westlake Village all the time.
Well,
but I learned to breathe. That's very important.
Sure.
I had a 2-to-1 ratio breathe where I'd go, and after you get by that first 2 mile mark, you could finish the rest of that race, which was usually 4 to 5 miles. You could run it as full out as you wanted, and they can't slow you down. You just don't lose it. But you do have to learn to breathe, and a lot of guys don't know how to breathe. I met very few people that really knew how to do that.
Right. Well, thank goodness that you had. You didn't have a car, and so you had to go out for track, and you learned how to
hit the nail on the head.
How to run at a pace that worked you and got you better, and to discipline yourself. in a way that if you had the car, you probably wouldn't have that same type of skill set that you would offer anybody. And when you said Billy Martin loved you because you were in shape, yeah,
I always felt like, well, I'm only half a step from being released anyway. I wasn't big. I wasn't a home run hitter and everything. Yeah. So I had to outwork them. That's what I wanted them to notice, how hard I worked. So whenever I walked out on the field, I would go around that track and I'd be lapping those guys, because they used to say you have to jog a mile before we start our stretching and workout. I would just blow the whole team away.
Sure.
I was running under 5-minute miles, before the workouts even started. But I think that's what made them realize I was serious and that I might be able to make myself a pretty good player someday. When I started hitting, then there was no doubt.
Rick, it's pretty interesting that you say this. And you mentioned Jerry Rice just a little bit earlier. Jerry Rice was asked on numerous occasions, why are you working so hard? Why are you doing this? He goes, because I don't want to get cut. I don't want to ever get let go. I don't ever want that. Fear can be a tremendous motivator if it's used in the right way, correct?
It was, because I was already behind the 8 ball as it was. The scouts told my mom he's going to be back in 2 weeks, so don't change the furniture around in his room. Yeah. And I wasn't mad at them for saying that. As a matter of fact, I applaud them now, but I was determined to prove them wrong. If they hadn't never said anything, maybe I wouldn't have worked so hard.
Wow.
But, I just, I fell into it and I stuck to it. And as time went on and each division, I ended up winning championships at A ball, AA ball, AAA ball, and the big leagues. I can't count how many times that we won. I was with Minnesota. We 2 divisional titles. I went to the Yankees. We won a divisional title, and we also won an American League title. I went to the Orioles, and 4 times we were the best team in baseball with our record. Played in 2 World Series with them. Won the American League, of course, and then we lost to Pittsburgh that one time, but I ended up winning 2 World Series, one with the Baltimore Orioles, where fortunately I was the MVP of that. I don't know how that happened because Earl Weaver before he gave me an opportunity to catch on a regular basis, he took me out and the batter's box. He says, "You see that white line right there next to home plate? I want you to put your left foot here and your right foot over here. And I want you to see that yellow pole down the line over there. I want you to hit the damn ball out of the ballpark down there. And if you do that, you'll play every day." That's all I needed to hear was play every day. Here goes the top hand. And there went my batting average.
Uh-oh. Well,
using the top hand is a killer for any baseball guy unless you've got maximum power,
Well, go ahead, Bob. I know you wanted to ask him something. Go ahead, Bob.
I want to say one thing. You talk about a guy that's got the most out of his ability by his heart and his grit. It's unbelievable when I think about it. I don't think there's ever been anybody in the history of baseball to be a catcher for 24 years in the big leagues. And look what he did. He was outworking everybody. He was born a little runt, and he actually it was the best thing that ever happened to him. He loved the game of baseball. You talk about loving baseball, that's a love affair right there.
I never wanted to be out of shape, so I wasn't.
Unbelievable. Outworked everybody.
I never stopped.
Outworked everybody.
Yeah, you had to because nobody was going to notice you.
The Dodgers. Wait till you hear the story about this guy. Not only physically but mentally, he didn't want to take no for an answer. And later on in this thing, he's going to tell you the story about the Dodgers, which I found fantastic. He sat one day and told me the whole story. I couldn't believe it. But that's for later in the
we'll get to it, Rick. Do me a small favor. You said your batting average went down when Earl Weaver, and I don't want to disparage Earl or anything like that. We'll get to that. But again, as a rookie, 1969, you got Billy Martin as your manager. And this is pre-George Steinbrenner Billy Martin. This is pre-mustache Billy Martin. But you've got Rod Carew, Tony Oliva, and Harmon Killebrew, and you're watching them every day. Were there any bits or pieces? Because the first time I saw Rod, I'm thinking this guy doesn't even, I could take the bat out of his hand. His hands are so soft. You know what I mean? It's just,
Yes.
he had a very different approach to hitting, where Killebrew was, he almost looked like the MLB logo, right? With the bat at the angle and power and strength. And you could probably, I'm assessing for you, please forgive me, a little piece of this, a little piece of that. And that makes Rick Dempsey even better, because I'm learning for what this guy is doing, and I can take a piece of that, and I can also watch what someone else is doing, and it's going to keep me in this league for a long while. Any of that
Harper,
true?
you hit the nail on the head, because the two guys I watched, Rod Carew and Harmon Killebrew. And what I saw from Rod Carew was a guy who laid the bat back here, had a very loose feel for the bat. And all he had to do when he got his hands in this position, now they're out in front of him, the bat to the ball, by the time the ball got into his hitting zone, he had a very short trip to the ball. Bam.
Yes.
And he wore out, he's a left-hand hitter, he wore out that space between short and third, and nobody could defense him, and actually later on in my career with Baltimore, I figured out how we could get Rod Carew out. We got him out 8 straight times in a row, which was unheard of, because we lobbed the ball up there and his hands went out like this. And when he got tired of waiting for it, he rolled the top hand. And he hit 8 ground balls in a row, and we made the play. And then he had one of
the most level swings of anybody. And in my understanding, right. And Gwynn would say, I'm paraphrasing, imagine a spider web between the pitcher's release and the ball hitting the ball. It's on a line. If you get your bat on that line, to touch that line as long as you possibly can during your swing, you're going to make contact a lot more than anybody else will. And that was a word picture. I've used that with little kids before. They kind of get it, right? Okay, that makes sense. But Rodney had the same flat swing, and I guess what you're doing, let's put some arc on the pitch and mess him up, and you were able to do that at least a little bit.
Well, it was. I'll go back to Earl Weaver that said, geez, I want you to hit the ball out of the ballpark. In order to do that, to take a pitch that is middle away and where you should be hitting it to right center field, you're rolling your top hand over, and look at it, picks up the head of the bat. It picks up the head of the bat and it rolls over the ball. You hit 1,000 ground balls to shortstop. Robin Yount, who I grew up with as a kid, he used to say, man, I couldn't wait for you. Why is that? He says, because I know you're going to hit me a lot of nice ground balls. And sure as hell, like 75% of the ground balls were right to him all the time. And, it wasn't a good thing you would want to teach any hitter, any kid who wanted to be a good hitter, because the top hand will kill you. Now they want everybody to hit home runs. But that's why you see three, sometimes 4 guys that hit less than 200, 2 or 3 of them, and the other one are in the 200s. That isn't hitting. That isn't what major league hitters do. Now they want you to hit home runs. You know what? The catcher goes to one knee and all this other kind of stuff, and they want you to go up there and swing as hard as you can. So it destroys the overall balance of the game, because defense is very important. If a catcher goes to one knee, he's not going to be able to block balls that aren't right in the middle of his zone. Everything else is going to the backstop. They steal bases at will. And so you don't have the double play in order anymore. And those are the things you learn as a catcher. How am I going to help all these different pitchers get through the innings that they're supposed to pitch with a successful season? And you've got to have good, strong defense. And the only way to do that is to position yourself properly behind home plate, where you can move your feet around. You can pick a guy off if you want. But boy, when they get good jumps on you, you got to be able to get that ball released on the way to second base. And fortunately, I was able to do that.
Bob, it's too bad that Rick doesn't know anything about the game. You know what I mean?
Hey, Rick, I wanted to ask you, Earl Weaver made the Hall of Fame, but wasn't he always known as going for the 3-run homer? That's what I always heard.
I think about that all the time in this analytical era. Yeah, it's nice to have them, but when you have Boog Powell and Brooks Robinson and Frank Robinson and some of the they're going to hit home runs all over the ballpark. Boog Powell got the MVP of the league 2 times, and you know what? He hit home runs to left center field in Old Memorial Stadium. That wasn't easy to do. Frank Robinson did the same thing. Eddie Murray, although he's a switch hitter, he hit all of his home runs right-handed to right field, left-handed to left field for the longest time. He was the most dangerous hitter I ever saw play the game. He and George Brett. George Brett would take a pitch, almost hit him in the ankle, and he'll inside it out for a double down the left field line. These guys were incredible offensive players. And to watch Eddie Murray take batting practice, you'd vomit because he just stands up there and goes. But you know what? With the game on the line, all he had to do was turn the dial up a little bit more, and now that became a boom.
Boom.
He could hit the ball out anywhere. And we had great hitters. Ken Singleton. Oh my God. Yeah. He was one of the best hitters I ever saw. Mr. Peepers, he could take a ball that far off the outside corner and they'd call it ball 4. They'd have a ball that far off the outside corner on me and they'd call it strike 3 because I had to take Earl's messages to the umpire. Oh my Jesus Christ, get your head out of your ass and call that ball a strike. That ball's a strike, So I wasn't the most beloved catcher in the game, that's for sure.
Well, okay, you spent, 4 years from 69 to 72 in Minnesota. First and foremost, what was it like playing in Bloomington, Minnesota in late September and October?
I know there was 2 feet of snow the first year I made it.
You're a Valley guy, what the heck? Now, Ron Yeri's been on. He goes, the weather didn't matter. It was the same on both sides. Well, Ron, that's part insane, Ron, because it is cold. It's cold on both sides. You're right, but it's cold, and you can't play the same way, at least not baseball.
Well, to try to grab a baseball bat with no gloves on in that freezing cold weather, and even when you hit it on the meat of the bat, it still wrung your hands. It just stung them so bad. It was hard to get the feeling back in them after a while. But
it's like hitting with the chicken bone, right? It's like a chicken bone that's going to split right there, right in between your hands the whole way. Are you kidding me?
No, you're absolutely right. It's tough baseball up there.
But there were great teams too. There were so many incredible players that were there at that time. And then even afterwards, Minnesota was not able to hold on to them, I guess, contractually. That was probably an issue for another show. But so much talent there, and World Series in the mid 60s, and then a couple of really good playoff teams. Talk about, just your learning experience, your first 4 years. You're in a really good organization that has a bunch of hungry guys, and you got to feed off of that.
Well, I started to learn a lot about calling ball games and approaching certain hitters in the lineup. You wouldn't want to give them an opportunity to get a good pitch. It would cost you a ball game, 1 pitch. You learn to think 3 pitches ahead, and you learn to think 3 batters ahead. That was the key for everything. Who's coming up? Can you pitch around this hitter and not give him anything good? Not be afraid to walk him because the next guy coming up is more of an out than you want to have to face in the batter's box at that time. Thinking 3 pitches ahead. What's my pitcher's best pitch in a situation where there might be runners in scoring position? I want to set up that hitter to get that pitch with 2 strikes. If he fouled off a couple balls, then I had an opportunity, but I was to that point where it was 3 pitches, and then I knew what pitch to call with every single pitcher that I get. And here's another thing in baseball that people don't realize. Okay, the starting catcher has to go out in a 4-man rotation, or now it's a 5-man rotation. He has to go out to the bullpen while everybody else is taking batting practice and warm up the starting pitcher that you're going to have. In my case, I was a regular, so it was every day. I had to be out in the bullpen and catch the Jim Palmers, the Mike Flanagans, and guys like that.
Cuellar, yeah, all those guys.
Yeah, Storm Davis, and a lot of guys. So
McNally.
The most important part of pitching is a release point. Where is your release point? Nowadays, you see guys throw and then the body turns and the right-handers fall off halfway to first base. The left-handers fall off halfway to third base. When you throw the ball, then all of a sudden you become a defensive player. You should land in a position where you got the perfect release point is right out here in front, and you're able to hit your target. But when you don't, then you got to be able to field your position. Jim Cott won 15 Gold Glove awards because as soon as he let the ball go, bam, he became a defensive player, and he made so many plays. He won all these, Gold Glove awards because of that, and I'm certain it helped him win a lot of ball games. But nowadays they just throw as hard as they can, and they're falling all over the place, and that's why you see more injuries now. The Tommy John operations have quadrupled, because all they do is just go to somebody else who can throw hard. But you got to teach the perfect mechanics, and I think that's one thing that I had as a catcher throwing. But throwing is the same for a pitcher or a catcher or the outfielder, is that you've got to make a good turn. You've got to get your arm up. You got to get your elbow out. You let that and find that release point, which really makes the ball carry a lot. So,
Rick, you mentioned a lot of stuff.
I learned that it was, pardon?
So, Rick, you mentioned a lot of stuff there. And the one thing that went through my mind is how cerebral your position was and how you had to think ahead. You probably could tell that Bert Blyleven his fastball just didn't have any juice in it today. Hey, Bert, let's throw a little more curveballs. Let's some more sliders today. Where Jim Cott maybe, fastball ready. Louis Tiant, let's do that. Everybody that was different. And while you're warming them up, you know what they've got for that day. Yeah. And then you have to play the chess match of, well, how are we going to throw in the first inning compared to the fourth inning when we get these guys the second time around? All of that is you don't get any time mentally to take any time off or to relax, do you? During that 9-inning game, you're working 4.5 hours in a 3-hour game, an hour and a half beforehand, and then you got to get ready for tomorrow's game.
Oh boy, you're absolutely right, Harper. But there's guys like Jim Cott and Jim Palmer. You never wanted to mess with them too much because you knew that they knew exactly how to wind up and how to throw certain pitches. They were never out of whack. They might throw a pitch a little too high one time or not, depending on the mounds that they're on. They're all different. But those guys you didn't have to do too much with. It's the guys that struggled, who didn't have good release points and let the ball go out way out here when it should have been like right here in front. Those are the kind of guys that are tough to work with. I'll use an example. In 1988, I had a young guy, Tim Belcher, and he was a hard thrower. He kind of had semi-good mechanics, but about the third or fourth inning, when things, the pitch count got up a little bit, he started to lose that. So we're in Cincinnati one day, or I think it was Cincinnati, yep. And he was pitching a decent ball game, but in the fourth inning, he started to lose his release point a little bit, and it was hard to get him back on track. And he threw a hard slider and a hard fastball. And so Fred Clare, the general manager, came in and he was trying to pump Timmy up a little bit. Say, hey, Timmy had a pretty good game today. And I was always sitting next to Tim because he was my best friend with the Dodgers at that time. And I said, oh, yeah, he's the best 5-inning pitcher in baseball. Oh, my God. Timmy's about 6'4", and when he had both his hands around my neck, it was very hard to breathe. He pinned me up against the wall, and he says, what the hell did you go and say that for? I said, because it's the truth, Tim.
Yeah.
You're not going to become a great pitcher until you come up with an off-speed pitch. So overnight, he came up with a split-finger fastball.
Yep.
Yeah. And it became his changeup because it was easy for the good hitters to sit on hard slider, hard fastball.
Right.
And Timmy won 5 or 6 games in the first half, but the second half he won, I think, 9 games for us in 1988 that helped get us to a World Series.
Just by splitting, it comes out the same position. It comes out the same arm angle. Everything looks familiar, but then that ball just falls off the table right before the plate, right?
When you change speeds, the heck with all this 96, 97, it gets hit. It gets hit. If you're up there over 100 miles an hour, it's not going to get hit as easily, but it'll get hit once in a while. But you've still got to have good mechanics to throw 100, 101, 102 miles per hour. But Tim was up there in the mid-90s, and when he threw that split finger fastball, the body looked the same as it went through its windup, and the release point looked the same, except when it came out from between the fingers, it didn't have the two fingers on the foreseam of the baseball that made it really jump at the hitters. All of a sudden, it became a changeup for him. That's basically what it was. Split finger fastball was a changeup, and wow, what a difference it made in his life, and what a difference it makes in every pitcher's life when you have command of those pitches.
Yeah, but they also have to have a guy like you telling them. Harper, anybody watching.
Well, one of my favorite stories, Bob, is
Harper. If anybody watching this, one thing they're going to learn today.
Yeah.
The catcher is the quarterback. And I've always said that. The catcher, what did Casey Stengel tell me, who I was with for 10 years? They used to say, was DiMaggio, Mantle your favorite players? He said, no, Yogi Berra. Yogi Berra was the best player I ever managed.
Yeah.
And because
I can see that.
And Yogi, he wasn't educated like you guys, but Yogi was brilliant. He was brilliant in baseball. He knew baseball. Casey used to say, how many times he struck out in 19 years? 407 times he struck out in 19 years and hit 285. Plus, he was tremendous defensively. The pitchers loved him. He was smart. I mean, and that, that's, so you think of the guys that Casey Stengel's around, and he says, any great team has to have a great catcher. I don't care who it is. Any great team, whether it's, and the Dodgers had one in '88, and you're speaking to him,
Mike Socha was a great catcher also. He was very good at calling a ball game also.
Who's that?
Mike Socha.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. 2 great catchers there.
He was a leader back there, and I think he had
coffee, and he and Mike Socha are sitting there having coffee. I go, you got 2 of the best catchers, right there. It's hilarious. By the way,
the pitchers trusted him. They trusted him, and I think that's one of the biggest things. I was going to tell you a neat little story because a couple years into my tenure with the Orioles, we picked up a pitcher from the Chicago White Sox, Steve Stone. Now, Steve had never won more than 12 ball games in any season that he pitched for them. I think he had 6 or 7, maybe 8 seasons with the White Sox. Never won more than 12 games. So we're in the first game, and he's leading 3-2. There's men on second and third and 1 out, and a right-hand hitter up with 2 strikes and no balls. So I called for a curveball in the dirt, just a curve and then in the dirt. And he throws his hands up and says, "Come out here." And I came out there, and I go, "What's the matter, Steve?" He goes, I'm not going to throw a curveball in the dirt and have it go to the backstop, and the tying run score and the winning run go to third with less than 2 outs. I said, "Listen, Steve, you're not that good." And he goes, "What the hell are you talking about?" I said, "No, you're not good enough to throw a curveball in the dirt and get it by me. Trust me when I tell you, I'm going to block every curveball that you throw." And I said, "Throw this curveball in the dirt and let's get rid of this guy, and we'll get the last guy out on our own." So he says, "Okay, but if you miss this," he said, "you're going to be the one to talk to the media." I said, happily. So he throws the curveball, perfect, 1 foot in front of home plate. The hitter swings at it, strike 3. I block the ball, I pick it up, and I throw it back at him 90 miles an hour. Oh, he catches it. "What's the matter with you?" I said, "You haven't gotten the last out yet." That was 1980. He had never won more than 12 games. I'm going to give you one guess at how many games he won that year. If you can
18.
come within 3 years, 3 wins of it. I'll give you the
He won the Cy Young. I know that.
18.
Yes, he did.
18?
No,
No.
20. Over 20.
Over 20? Yeah. Okay.
He won 25 games
Holy
that
mackerel.
year.
Wow.
Learning how to get ahead in the count, he had no problems with that. But learning how to pitch to hitters out of the strike zone when you didn't have to throw strikes. And he just walked through it was amazing to see. To have 32 decisions in a year was amazing.
No kidding. Yeah.
25-7. Even Palmer didn't win 25 games.
Wow.
But that was
Hey,
an amazing year.
I feel like I'm talking to Warren Spahn, Harper.
Well,
Warren
Palmer was the best pitcher I ever caught. There's no doubt. He had a knowledge of the game that I'll never have.
You know what he used to say?
He was
3 Heineken
incredible.
beers.
Whenever I couldn't get a hitter out, I'd go talk to Jim. I can't get this Bruce Bhakti. He got all this stuff going on, a left-hand hitter. I said, how do you get him out? He says, throw him the slider down and in. Sure as hell, I called the slider down and in. He missed it every day.
The art of pitching was keeping the hitter. You know, he'd have 3 Heineken beers. And he'd say the art of pitching is keeping the hitter off balance.
I know.
Over, and Rick alluded to that earlier in this interview, because he's a catcher and a quarterback and a brilliant guy. You got to keep him off balance. Look, I love that story about Carew throwing him the slow balls. That's hilarious.
Yeah, just lobbed the ball. Scotty McGregor, left-hander, just lobbed the ball up there and let him hit ground ball after ground ball, because that's the top hand. You get a hitter to start rolling that top hand over, you're going to cut that batting average down. Let me see. My batting average went from 600 to 200. 400 points.
You're not counting the clutch hits.
Yeah.
Hey, Rick, do me a favor. Tell me the 4 years in Minnesota, and then you get to go to the Yankees. And right about that time, George Steinbrenner ends up taking the team. And you've got a really interesting time in baseball history there. First of all, what happened? Was it just the end of a contract? I mean, free agency wasn't the same as it is now. Tell me a little bit about that transition, and then what it meant to you, to be in the company of the boss.
Well, I went back. Billy Martin was the manager of the Yankees at that time too. Thurman Munson became my favorite mentor and catcher. He was fun to watch. He was a very, very tough defensive guy. I think I picked up a lot from watching him play and his approach to the game and how to handle certain pitchers, when to be tough with them, when to go easy with them, the things to look for, release point, it all came from Thurman. And being with the Yankees though was a thrill, because I'll never forget how I felt when I first walked into Yankee Stadium out on the field, underneath the grandstands, but into the bullpen area. And wow, what a feeling. Babe Ruth and
Monument Park. Goodness gracious. Yeah. What was that like? You knew all about that as a kid.
Trophies and everything, it was hard to look at all of that because there was so much history out there, and some of the greatest players, Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris, all of them. And you saw the numbers that they put up, and you're saying to yourself, God, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to do something like that. But it made you appreciate baseball, being in the presence of where all of the really big names you heard and you saw the old highlight films from. There's a nice picture of Thurman Munson, one tough son of a gun, I'll tell you. So I tried to play just like him, but.
One of his legs was 140 pounds, and your whole body was 140. So it was a little bit different, I would imagine, right? Just a little. Rick? What do you glean from him? You sat and watched him play a lot of baseball, right? And I know you want to be in the lineup. Everyone does, but there are times where you go, "What can I learn to do it?" So when he's not in there, that nobody in the organization skips a beat. That we're going to still play, and I'm going to be the best I can be, like what he does.
It's the way he communicated with the pitching staff. Okay. They had total confidence in anything that he called and whenever he wanted to do certain things, He had a presence about him When he walked out to the mound, he could help any pitcher get through some tough times. And he did it time and time again. And I used to talk to him all the time, how did you know how to pitch all of these guys up there? He goes, well, you look for their strengths and everything. You can see that. And then you've got to compare it to what the pitcher throws and what he can do. And you just have to stay basically out of the happy zone all the time. That's why you needed to work with pitchers on the sidelines and in the bullpen a lot more to get their confidence that you're going to receive the ball. Back in my early days, when you caught a ball, you wanted to catch it in the middle of the palm of your glove because it made a pop, it made a sound. And pitchers responded. They knew you had good hands back there. If all of a sudden you're going pang and that ball is hitting and it's making a bigger sound than the velocity that the guy was really throwing. Yeah. And they liked that, Thurman was good at receiving. I like to say I followed in his footsteps and became a better receiver after watching him for a while. And I took that to Baltimore with me. But, he was also a pretty darn good clutch hitter, Thurman Munson. He wasn't a pull hitter. He'd hit a home run every now and then, but he was a hell of a good contact hitter, hit the ball all over the place, right field, right center. He could pull the ball down the left field line. He was just a hard-nosed player, block home plate with the best of them, He was somebody you didn't really want to tangle with because he was very strong, very stocky. And if he went down, you had to slow down because you weren't going to get through Thurman Munson.
Yeah. Those guys in that lineup, and I've got a picture here with George and Billy. It became the circus, right? The Bronx Zoo and all that, but you're still there in a transition where they hadn't won in years, right? It'd been a while since Mickey and Yogi and everybody that was a part of Billy and Whitey and Elston Howard, you name it, right? All these great players. Bobby Mercer was a fantastic player, but they didn't win a World Series when he was there, right? There was a big lull in the action. When George comes in, the pressure to win increases dramatically. Tell me what that was like for you, having to, yet not only beat the Red Sox, but do so convincingly and fill the stands.
Well, George, I never got a chance to talk to him a whole lot. I would see him in passing, but he was always very nice to me because he knew I gave 100% out on the field, even though I didn't get a chance to play. He loved Thurman. He loved Bobby. When he took over the ball, not too many people in baseball liked George Steinbrenner. He was not afraid to say to a player, hey, you're not hustling. If you don't want to hustle, I'll get rid of you. He just faced up to anybody, Reggie, all of them. And if they didn't want to give 110%, he didn't want them there as New York Yankees. So I always made sure that, I was always ready to go and gave as much as I possibly could give and a little more. But he liked when I would come in and I think one of the reasons why they got me with the Yankees is that Thurman had trouble throwing. He threw underhand to second base because I think he had labrum problems in his shoulder. He still threw a few people out, but late in the game, that's when Billy would put me in on defense. And then I made my salary on throwing out 72% of my runners working in that situation. 16 of 22 runners. I think I remember that number for some odd reason, but that was my job with the Yankees, and George already always appreciated that I did my job as good as I could possibly do. So, but the
at
Yankees
one point,
were,
if you remember Colin Cowherd, and this is probably just before when you got there in '73, free agency hadn't kicked in, but allow me just to say this, and I'd be interested in your comment afterward. Colin Cowherd, who has a nationally syndicated radio show, says, when I come back, I'm going to tell you who the greatest owner of any sport is, and we'll do that right after this. And I waited. I was going to go get my haircut. I sat in the car and I waited for the 3 minutes of commercials. And thank God, he got right to it. He goes, I told you what I was going to do. We're going to talk about the greatest owner, and it's George Steinbrenner. And let me tell you why. George Steinbrenner took a Yankee organization, and he would sign Catfish Hunter and eventually Reggie Jackson and Dave Winfield, so that when you were on the road in Cleveland, they would come to the game on a Wednesday or a Thursday and want to see the New York Yankees play. We knew that the place was going to be filled in Boston on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But when I went to Kansas City, when I went to Seattle, when I went to California and the Angels, the Yankee organization had the best players in the league, and people would come to watch them and they'd boo them. He didn't care. He didn't care if you wrote about them good or evil in the New York Times or in the Post. He just wanted you to write about him. Write about my Yankees, and then I'm going to be happy. Is there any truth to that for you, going, you know what? I may not have liked him personally, but as a businessman, he made baseball better because, and then you fill in the blank. Tell me what you think, Rick.
Right from the very beginning, George Steinbrenner, he talked to the ball club, and he talked about winning and how to give 110%, not just 100. And he would know exactly what you were like. If he didn't like the way you played, I don't care if you only played one game a week, he would get rid of you. And he just wanted more than 100% out of you every single time out. And he was not afraid to get up in anybody's face, and so if he didn't like the way Reggie was playing, that he would call him in and he'd say so, and I think people learned to respect George because he was honest. A lot of people didn't like him because he was too honest. And I got along with him pretty well. Not that we had a lot of conversation and everything like that, but even if a guy who came off the bench who wasn't prepared to play, George would say something. He was a very unique owner, and he wanted to win for New York. And he would have paid any amount of money to get the best players, and he did. The Catfish Hunter was the best pitcher in baseball at the time. He went out and got him. Reggie was one of the best clutch hitters in the game at the time. He went out and got him. It didn't matter how much he had to pay. He wanted to be a winner in New York. And if you weren't helping him be that, then he would get rid of you. And you were scared to death to ever step out of line and not be ready to play for George Steinbrenner, because he was tough. He was
in a
tough.
relatively short period of time, Rick, the Yankees go from, they're in the middle of the pack or maybe even at the bottom, to where they're playing for a World Series. Now, this is the year that you get booted, if you will, and you go to Baltimore. Talk a little bit about the experience that was like. I got one other picture there of Thurman, and I wanted to get one of you here, you in a Yankee uniform, right? There's nobody there in Cleveland that day, is there? Look at that. There's 5 people. You can count them.
Nothing but the recluse spiders in the bullpen. They were all over the place. That was it. The Yankee experience was a fabulous experience. I enjoyed being a Yankee. I was very proud of that. Being able to be there with all the great players. I got myself in a little bit of trouble once towards the end of the 1975 season. The Yankees were tied for first place with the Baltimore Orioles, 6 games to go. 3 in Cleveland, we swept them. The Orioles, I don't know who they were playing, but they swept also, so we're still tied. Getting on the airplane, Bobby Mercer and Thurman Munson were teasing a guy named Bill Sudeikis. And Bill had been around, big guy, about 6'3" to 6'4", about 230, 235. And they were teasing him about being the 3rd string catcher. Who's second? Dempsey goes, yeah, Dempsey's a better catcher. So he comes down, we're on an airplane, half regular people in the back, and the rest of the Yankees are on the front half of the plane. Bill came sauntering down, the middle of the airplane, and he stops at my place, and he grabs my fork and takes a bite out of my sandwich and throws it in my lap. And then I said, Bill, what's the matter with you? He says, I just don't like you. I said, well, hey, I'm really sorry. about that, but that's tough. And he stabs me in the chest with a fork. And back in those days, that was the regular kind of stuff that you had at home, everybody went into a panic because Bill was now out of control, and I'm bleeding like crazy because just got stabbed in the chest with the fork. And they got it all calmed down, and the trainers came and patted me up and everything, So we got on the bus to go to Milwaukee after we landed, and Bill just continued to pick the whole time. He didn't like. He was mad at Bobby and Thurman for getting on him so bad about being the third string catcher. So he wanted to take it out. So as soon as we got at the Hotel Pfister in Milwaukee, I ran off the back of the bus, and he was yelling at me, "Go ahead and run, chicken, run." I went into the lobby, not because I was afraid of him. I just had a little more room to move around in case I needed to run. So Bobby Mercer came up and grabbed me by the right arm, and he said, "Dempsey," he says, "you got to let it go." He says, "We got a big series here. We don't want to get anybody hurt, blah, blah, blah." And as soon as he finished, Bill Sudeikis came up and grabbed me by the other, and he said, "What's it going to be, street fighting or boxing gloves?" And I said, "Neither." And I hit him 3 times, and I knocked him down. I think he was out for a second. But I didn't want him to get up because he would have broke me in two. He was a big boy. I'm 5'11" and 160 pounds. It wasn't a good matchup.
Hey, Rick, I love you more now than I ever have. Thanks for that one. That's one I never heard.
So I was in such a frenzy that he was going to get up. I hit my roommate, and he went over a table, and glasses flying everywhere. And finally, a little guy on our ball club, No Neck Williams. He was an outfielder we got from the White Sox. He came running and hit me like a fullback, knocked me back, and I stepped on Bobby Mercer's hand and broke his finger. And oh my God, George was so angry. "Any more fighting before it's over? And it's going to be a $2,000 fight." Well, that's like $2 million in today's game, So we ended up losing a game. Fly ball fell in right center field, and Lou Piniella couldn't get to it, and run scored, and Milwaukee beat us 1 game. And we lost to Baltimore because they swept their series. And George called in to his office afterwards, and he threw Bill Sudeikis off the team, said, "Don't take any memorabilia when you get the hell out of here, and don't come back. You'll never be invited to Yankee Stadium." And then I was crying because I love the Yankees. Through my wife, her Uncle Sonny was the head of the Meadowlands, not Meadowlands, but the Trotters also in Yonkers. And he introduced me to some of the Goombas around New York. And every time I would get a chance to play and maybe get a hit, I'd stop by and see him at the track, which was right across the street from where he lived. And hey, a couple of them, "Hey, Dubs, you had a pretty good game tonight. Maybe one of these days you'll get a chance to play when Thurman retires or something like that, And they were always in my corner. And when Bill Sudeikis said at the end of the baseball season that he was going to kill me because you couldn't do it the last 3 games of the season, and the Patty boy turned and said to me, he said, "Hey, well, Dempsey, the Sudeikis, the guy who's, he said in the newspaper he's going to kill you. He said it's going to be pretty tough to do if he doesn't have any legs." And I said, "Oh my God." All right, so I had to call my Uncle Sonny up and get him to smooth it a little bit, and so he did. He got him to calm down. So, no harm, no foul. So I got out of that mess. But George kept his promise when he told me at the end of it all that he's going to have to trade me after, getting in a fight and breaking Bobby's finger, and that cost him a championship. He wasn't too happy. That's why I was part of the 10-player trade that went from the New York Yankees in '76 to the Baltimore Orioles. And it was the way I got my first opportunity to play every day, but I didn't like the way it all happened because I loved the Yankees at the time, and I really did appreciate George Steinbrenner as the owner.
Scott McGregor, Tippy Martinez, Rudy May, Dave Pagan, for Ken Holtzman, Doyle Alexander, Elrod Hendricks, Grant Jackson, and Jimmy Friedman. That was on June 15th, just before the deadline, 1976. And oddly enough, what did the Yankees do that year? 1976?
Yep. They made it to the World Series, but they lost 4 games in a row to Cincinnati.
Yeah, there they are. That's the opening lineups, right? For
Yep.
I thought you were on this, and Rick, you told me before we went on the air that you're not in that picture, right? But the Yankee organization, my gosh, what a quick turnaround from the depths. And they're playing against the big red machine. And like you said, you win the first couple of games, but that experience of being able to do that, the organization really turned themselves around, didn't they?
Oh, they really did. The Yankees were, all of a sudden they became that team to beat in the American League. But I went to Baltimore, and I'll tell you what, I fell in love with the Baltimore fans. I fell in love with even Earl Weaver, who was very, very tough manager to get along with. You couldn't warm up to him if you got cremated together. So he was tough. But I got an opportunity too to catch some of the best pitchers in baseball at the time. Palmer being the number one. I even got a little bit with Cuellar and Dobson. Guys like that, and the team itself with Mark Belanger at shortstop and Brooks Robinson, it was quite a team at that time, and I think even Baltimore started to move up the ladder a little bit, and then finally in '79, a couple years after I was there, we won the American League title and played in the World Series against Pittsburgh. But we always had established through Earl Weaver, who was not an easy guy, like I say, to get along with. But I'll tell you what, he embedded the game in your soul, because you didn't come to the ballpark not ready to play ever for him. He was one tough manager, not very tall, but I'll tell you, he had a spirit for winning baseball games that was unmatched even to this day. He was one tough guy to get along with out there.
Well, I got a couple pictures of you throwing out a few of the Pirates. What was worse, having to play them in Pittsburgh or having to look at those god-awful uniforms that they had when they couldn't make up their mind
what they wanted to be,
or the stovetop caps, or the combination of black on top, gold on the bottom, and vice versa? Goodness gracious. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, at the beginning of that World Series, we knew Pittsburgh had a much better hitting team, but I knew we had a pretty good pitching staff that could shut them down if we make, all the right pitches and do the right things. At the very beginning, look at Willie Stargell and Parker. These guys were incredibly big, strong hitters. Matlock was still pitching. He was the best hitter in baseball at the time, and
yeah.
Tim Foley was at shortstop, good defensive player, etc. So I made a little bit of a mistake, and I realized that I shouldn't have said anything. But at the very beginning of the World Series, when they introduced me, I was hitting ninth in the lineup, and I went up and shook hands with Earl Weaver, and I looked up at Chuck Tanner. I said, "Chuck, we're going to get this series over with quick, because when your guys get on base, just let them try to steal. And I'll slow them down for you, So.
Wait. This is during that, and ladies and gentlemen, catching number 7, and you're walking up and you said that.
Well, I shook Earl Weaver's hand, and I looked over at Chuck, and I said, "Chuck, we're going to get this series over with quick." I said, "When your guys get on, they want to steal." I said, "Go ahead and let them, because I'm going to throw them all out." So Marino, he tried to steal. Parker tried to steal. And then they had a guy named Jackson, I think, who was a professional base runner. He got on and tried to steal. We didn't even make it. He didn't even make it to the bag within sliding distance. He was out by so far. But if you stop, we jumped up to a 3-1 lead in that series. And I thought, okay, we're going to win the World Series. But what happened, they stopped running. So they weren't giving us that out anymore that I needed, to cut down their offense a little bit. And slowly but surely, things started to fall in their way. In the last 3 games, they got every break they could get. Plus, they were a pretty darn good hitting ball club on top of it also. And we ended up losing that World Series. And I said to myself, I never should have said anything to Chuck Tanner about stealing, because he may have tried to steal more bases trying to get back into the World Series. And that might have played perfectly into our hand, but it didn't. We let them get that momentum, and they were too tough a team to hold down. And Willie Stargell put an end to it in that last ball game with a home run against Mike Flanagan in Game 7 that ended up costing us the World Series.
Wow. Well, lesson learned, I guess, right, Rick?
Yes, it was, because I never opened my mouth after that again. We ended up winning a couple.
Wait till you're holding the championship trophy. And by the way, you got one of those just a couple years later. What was special about the 83 season for you?
Well, you know what? I know that I like to say Earl Weaver wanted me to be a pull hitter when I really wasn't a pull hitter. And it took a lot out of my swing. When I started using the top hand, the batting average dropped to, in the 230s and 40s and everything. But I was so much a better hitter, and I knew it. But what happened in that 1983 World Series against the Philadelphia Phillies is my first at bat. Mark Belanger, I think, was on base in front of me, and I don't know what. All of a sudden, I hit a line drive to right field. I was very conscious about trying to hit the ball where it was pitched, and I was just trying to help the ball club, get guys over into scoring position and do the best I could that way, because I knew that I didn't have the swing I had early on from the Yankees in Minnesota. So I hit a line drive off the wall.
What do you mean?
Pardon?
Real quick, what do you mean by you didn't have the same swing? You still in the majors, what is different about your swing that's not the same? The picture I'm showing here, your bat is as level as it can be. There's a little bit of a roll on your left ankle, but other than that, I mean, the swing looks great, right?
Well, it wasn't that I had a bad swing. It's just that I tried to pull everything. That's what Earl wanted me to do. And when you start using the top hand, it destroys being able to good solid contact on a lot of the pitches away on the outside half of the plate.
Okay.
And when I did really hit the ball well, it was down the left field line, it would go foul. I mean, I hit a lot of home runs foul, but I should have been spraying the ball around from right field to center field all the time. And because my batting average would have stayed up, maybe close to 300 all the time, because that's what it always was until I got there. And so it wasn't the right thing, but all of a sudden, as I hit that ball to right field in Game 1 and Belanger ended up scoring, I just felt like a 2,000-pound weight fell off my back, and I said, you know what? This is the way I should just relax and hit the rest of my career. And so it turned out I did hit a lot better after that point. And even later on when I joined the Dodgers I hit 270 in all the games that I started, and that was more like me. I hit a lot more balls to right center and right field with them. I still hit a few home runs that helped them, but I was a much better hitter at that point, but not like I was the first couple of years I was in the big leagues.
Well, the World Series itself, you're going against the Phillies. They had won at 80. Great team, great pitching staff. You have the very same going there. What was that like for you going into Philadelphia? I always thought when I played with the Eagles, it was early in the football season, but the middle of the summer. So that 10-foot fence and then the rafters on top of it, it looked like you'd had to hit a ball 450 feet to get it out of that park. It wasn't exactly that, but it looked like it was an optical illusion. Was that a difficult place to play?
I wouldn't have called it a difficult place to play. There were tougher ballparks to hit in than Philadelphia. Certainly wasn't expecting to hit a home run, But the thing that the Phillies did is they pretty much pitched me the same way after that first at bat the entire series. Fastball away, curveball, slider, fastball in, and go from there. Well, I was always looking for the fastball middle end, and I hit my share of doubles to the left field. But that first one went to right field because that was up and out over the plate a little bit. But it helped me relax and not try to swing so hard all the time to hit the ball out. So I hit a couple doubles to the left side, and then in the fifth game, I got a fastball up, middle in, same kind of series that they had started me off with in game one. And I got a hold of one, and I didn't get it real high, but I got it far enough to get over the fence in left center field. And man, I'll tell you, there's no better feeling to be contributing to a ball club like that and helping them offensively when you've struggled most of your career with the Baltimore Orioles.
Yeah. Well, this is two different shots at almost the same identical moment when you are rounding third and Cal Sr. Shakes your hand and gives you a little pat on the backside to let you know a job well done. I just thought this was something that was pretty special right there. Good moment for you, right? Being able to circle them all.
It was an incredible moment for me just for the first hit that drove in one run. It was such a good feeling to go into second base and say, I finally helped this ball club offensively, which I should have been doing my entire career. But I had some good games, but not as many good ones as I should have had. But fortunately, we had some pretty darn good players on the ball club that could pick up the slack for you. Eddie Murray, Cal Ripken, and Doug DeSensei, and a lot of really good offensive players that had the power that Earl Weaver was looking for all the time.
Yeah. And a good quarterback. Hey, I love the Pete Rose, Rick Dempsey photo you showed just a minute ago. Those are what two classic photos those were.
Yeah. This one here, both Rick and the umpire's eyes are closed. The batter's eyes are open, but he's going to foul one away. I thought this was a lot of fun to be able to find this.
Yeah, Philly had some pretty good players, with Pete Rose and all of them, the guys that you see. And
Schmidt, Lazinski, Bake McBride, for crying out loud, they had the fastest outfield you could ever imagine. Boa, Manny Trio at second base. Their pitching staff, you had the best left-hander, probably one of the best in the history of the game. Bob Boone. All these, they had a great lineup.
No, they had a great lineup, but we also had a great pitching staff. And we were thinking about 1979 when we were playing Pittsburgh and how we jumped out to a 3-1 lead and then didn't close the door. We didn't peep a word. I never said anything. We stayed focused until that fifth game was over with. We lost the first game to Philly that year, and then we won 4 in a row. But I was afraid to say anything because I remembered walking back to the dugout that we had blown a World Series in 1979. Hopefully it wasn't going to happen again. And we had a good enough pitching staff and a great bullpen. Oh, my God, a great bullpen.
Yeah.
And we made good pitches that entire series. And we stayed ahead of the hitters, and a lot of times they got themselves out. I can remember them just swinging at a lot of pitches that were just a little bit out of the strike zone. And it's really what contributed to us winning that 1983 World Series.
Well, lesson learned, and guess what? You get to hold the trophy or get a couple pictures with it. And MVP, goodness gracious, Rick, that you said that 2,000-pound, I'll call it the gorilla that came off your back just with the single. And then everything else, I mean, close plays at the plate, you saw some pictures of those, and everything just fit, right? Baseball was fun. You didn't have to work at it. You'd already done all the work. Now you just got to relax and play, and next thing you know, you're a world champion. What was that like for you?
Well, it was an amazing play because I hit ninth in the lineup. I set the kind of records that you don't want to set. I was the only guy voted most valuable player of a World Series that got pinch hit for not only once but twice. You know, I set a record for the most extra base hits in a 5-game series, 5, but I never had a single. And so, well, that's a good thing though. But you know, it's stuff like that, you know, that makes you kind of laugh a little bit at times. But we had an incredible team, and we played very, very strong defense. And we weren't going to give you any runs. If you were going to beat us, you had to hit the ball well. They pitched very well against Cal Ripken and Eddie Murray. Eddie Murray didn't come out of it till the last game, when all of a sudden he put the real Eddie Murray out there and hit 2 home runs. Yeah. His name came up on the scoreboard, and I'll never forget his first home run hit his name on the scoreboard.
Oh my gosh, really? Yeah.
I was very fortunate to play for the caliber players. Cal Ripken came in, you know, and his first full year in the big leagues, I think he was MVP of the league that year also. And, you know, there were so many things he could do. He was a great shortstop, very smart shortstop. Didn't have the speed that Mark Belanger had, but he played the game where he played a little shallower and cut balls off before they could get into the outfield and stuff. So he was a pretty special player for quite a long time. Evidenced by the fact yeah.
But he's also an enigma in that he's 6'4", right? No one was playing shortstop at 6'4". What are you thinking? But he had great feet, right? And his range was as good as anybody out there who was smaller and quicker.
Yeah, it was he was always an athlete. Even when he wasn't playing baseball, he was playing basketball or something, you know. He was good at everything he did. And he was always in great shape. And I think that just attributed to the fact that he set the record for the most consecutive games ever. And it was amazing. You know, his work ethic permeated that ball club. And so none of us were ever really afraid to go out and work hard at it. Eddie Murray was incredible. You know, he was strong on top of it. His work ethic was unmatched also. The way he just went about things, you know, very quiet. He didn't have an ego, didn't want the media talking about, you know, home runs and, you know, records to be set and all that kind of stuff. He just wanted to go out and play the game.
Right.
He did it as well as anybody in the history of the game, maybe most of them better. Yeah. But we had an amazing ball club, and our defense was impeccable.
Well, you got to be, the partakers in drinking of the champagne and bringing a championship back to the city of Baltimore, which values it as much as anybody, that small town and the community, and how much they loved you and the Colts and everything that was about of their sports history. And then you got to dial up and do it again. So for a couple of years, it didn't go so well. And next thing you know, you're going to Cleveland. What was that like for you, getting that call and signing a agreement? Was that 1987?
Well, yes, it was 1987. I got into a little bit of a contract dispute with the people who were running the ball club back then. And I thought that I had done enough in the 10 years I was with the Orioles to get that 4th year on my contract. It wasn't guaranteed, but I never thought that they would take it away from me, you know, making a trade for Mickey Tettleton, I think it was. And so, I mean, I got a little upset on the phone, and I said, I'll play for the worst team in baseball before I come back to the Orioles now. And God
started
was
talking again, didn't you, Rick? You started talking. You said some stuff. What are you doing?
Yeah, I don't know, you know, what the hell. And then I ended up playing for the Cleveland Indians, who lost 103 ball games that year.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Right.
And you know what? Sam McDowell had a great line, who pitched for the Cleveland Indians for many years. A reporter said, "What do you think about playing in Cleveland?" And he said, "The only difference between Cleveland and the Titanic is that Titanic had better restaurants."
That sounds like him.
Hey, Rick, let's be fair. let's be fair. Would it be out of my line to say, if I'm a Baltimore executive, hey, he's been in the league now 15, 17, 19 years. He's getting a little long in tooth. I don't want to give him that extra year. Can you look at it from that side and go, yeah, maybe they can justify it? I'm not asking you to give in. I'm just saying, is that a possibility?
I had a great relationship with the people involved, and they knew me, and it was just one of those times. I wasn't afraid to face the deal from Mickey Tettleton, but I had earned the contract. I had earned that contract over and over again.
Yeah.
And it was taken away from me, and now I had to start all over again. And so it wasn't a good feeling. I absolutely loved Hank Peters, the general manager, but he made a decision. I loved Cal Sr. He was taking over the ball club too.
Yeah.
I know what they were trying to do. But I had never been paid a lot of money in the game of baseball. And so, I mean, that would have been my first really good year, that contract. And I thought, with all that I gave to, the team actually winning 3 years, 1 year, there was a strike year.
Yeah.
And they changed the rules around somehow. But at the end of the season, even though we didn't win the first or the second half, we were down 1 game to both teams. We had the best record in the American League. So we should have won. We should have played in the playoffs somehow, but it didn't work out. And that would have been 3 times in the 10 years I was there. And we were always a good ball club. But, it's one of those kind of things that happens, and I stuck to my guns, and I wasn't going to come back. The offer was really poor, and that's just the way it was. So I went on about my business, and it eventually ended up taking me to the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Thank you very much. You couldn't have asked for a better segue.
Yep.
The picture I have here. Rick, you go from Yankee Stadium, you go to Memorial Stadium, and then one of the jewels in anybody's tiara would be Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles. And had you ever played in there in high school or anything?
No. Back when I was on a Pony League team that won the West Coast title, we had gone to Dodger Stadium once there to be introduced at Dodger Stadium. That was the only time I was ever there. But I thought about it when I left Cleveland. I said, I've never played on the West Coast. I want to be close to home and see what happens. So I had seen Tommy Lasorda at a banquet. And I said, Tommy, any room on your ball club for another catcher? He goes, well, I'll talk to the general manager and we'll see. You've got, a couple of World Series championships and MVP. You guys have been one of the best teams in baseball. In fact, the best team in baseball the last 10 years. And he says, I'll see what Fred says. I don't think Tommy ever said anything to Fred. He got busy, and I was looking to hurry up and get a contract with somebody so I didn't miss out. So I decided to go down and see Fred Clare, the new general manager of the Dodgers. I got down to his office at 2:00 in the afternoon, and I asked the secretary if I could talk to him, and she said he's in a meeting. So an hour or two later, I said, is he still in the meeting? He says, yeah, he's still in the meeting. So at 7:00 at night, she had already gone home at 5:00. And I was sitting outside of Fred Clare's office, and he peeked through the door, and I said, Fred, listen, I've never quitted anything in my life. Please don't make this be the first time. If it doesn't work out, don't worry about it. I just like to talk to you for a while and see. So I went in and talked to him about the upcoming season. I knew that the Dodgers were picked dead last in all of baseball, not just the National League, but in all of baseball. They supposedly had the worst team. Well, when I went in to talk to him, I said, Fred, this is what I will do. Fred doesn't remember it to this day. I'm sure, and he every time I say it in front of him, he says, no, I don't remember that. But I would take a lie detector test right now, and every single thing that I said was true. I said, Fred, I'll hit a home run every 24 at-bats. I'll drive in a run every 5 at-bats. I'll help with the pitching staff, and we'll end up winning the National League division. We'll play in a National League title game, and we'll win that. And then we're going to play in the World Series. We're going to win the World Series. I'm going to catch the last pitch, and I'm going to give you the ball. And I did everything. I think I was 1 RBI shy of the prediction I made, but I think hitting that extra home run was what would have made up for it. But
so what you're telling me, Rick, is you're a liar. You were 1 RBI short of all of those expectations, and it was all a lie. Are you kidding me?
And I got credit for it, though.
What a hodgepodge group of guys, too.
Oh, my God. I've never seen anything like it. Mark Wahlberg is doing a documentary on the Pony League team that I played for that went to the Pony League World Series in Washington, Jefferson, Pennsylvania. And he's done all of these interviews with the whole team. And that's going to be coming out any day now. I just got word from about our manager who robbed 13 banks while we were winning tournaments all on the West Coast. His name was John Jennings. And after we lost the final game of the Pony League World Series, he got caught robbing his last bank.
Oh, goodness gracious. Look at this. The Goombas in the Meadowlands needed to help you and protect you there, right? Goodness.
Yeah. I don't know why that story just now came out, but I was trying to say this team that the Dodgers put together.
Yeah.
Mark Wahlberg should be making a movie about the 1988 Dodgers, because it was truly the most incredible season, not only that I ever played for anybody, but I had ever heard of before. Because we only had like 4 regular players on the team.
Yeah.
And Steve Sachs and Kirk Gibson, a few other guys that played every single day. The rest of us were kind of like platoon players. And at spring training, after the number 1 guys have a couple at bats, they want to get out of. They don't want to play the rest of the game. So we had this bench full of guys, Mickey Hatcher and myself and Danny Heap and Gonzalez and just about 6 or 7 guys. And I call them the stuntmen, because we kept going in for the stars, and we'd come back and win all over again. I think we only lost like 5 games that spring training. It was an amazing spring training. But when we started the season, nothing changed. Every single time one of the stuntmen got an opportunity to play in a ball game, he did something spectacular that helped us win a game. And we knew we weren't, the best players that any team would have, but we also knew at the same time when Fred Clare put that team together, he knew they weren't the best players. John Shelby and myself, he knew, but they were the right players for that ball club. And we just went to extremes to win baseball games. And we did exactly what I said we would do. We would win our division, and we would play in a championship game for the National League title. We did that against the Mets, who had beat us, I think, 10 out of 11 games all season. And we got into the World Series, and even
hold on right there. Hold on,
Yep.
if you don't mind. I want to interrupt you I want to get to the World Series.
Okay.
But beforehand, I don't know what order, so I'm going to ask you first. Tell me about how good Oral Hershiser started to develop, because he broke Don Drysdale's record during that season, and that he's a nerd. When you look at him, he's a computer science major on the campus, walking down the way, and you're going, oh my gosh, you could blow that guy over with a deep breath. But my goodness, what and Tommy called him Bulldog and all that kind. What did you see in him from spring training to the middle of the season? We go, nobody can hit this kid. What is going on?
Well, I'll tell you what, he was very unique. During the course of my career, I caught 16 Cy Young Award winners. Not all of them, on the same team, but I learned something about pitching, and through having all of these guys, Jim Palmer, who won 3 Cy Young Awards. Oro was very special. He had a pitch that nobody could touch. When he let his middle finger was about that much bigger than his index finger. And when he threw a 2-seam fastball, it moved 10 times more than any of the best 2-seam fastballs I ever had. As a matter of fact, when a left-hand hitter was up, I would put my body on the outside corner where I wanted it to end, but I would put the target over on inside to a left-hander, and then his ball moved. A 2-seam fastball that moved that much is incredible, because normally a good 2-seamer will move about so big. Oral's was, I can't even stay in the frame here on the picture. It was incredible.
If lefty's coming up and you're the catcher, the ball would start at the lefty's hand, and it's almost a screwball.
It would start on the inside corner and end up on the outside corner.
Oh my gosh.
And I mean,
it's a fastball.
It was a pitch that I don't think anybody ever saw it. I mean, he never threw that pitch like that in any other season that I ever heard of. I asked, I said, has he been throwing like this his whole career? And no, not as good as he is now.
No, it's news to me. I haven't seen what's going on, right?
He just had it. It was amazing. And sometimes he'd get behind in the count, and because you never want to see a pitcher walk anybody, because that's the ingredient to lose ball games, is walking people.
Sure.
And so I would go by. I knew that nobody could hit it. I don't think I remember any hitter hitting his 2-seam fastball. I would say to the hitter, I said, be ready for the fastball. You're going to get it now. And no matter where it was, they couldn't hit it. They knew the fastball was coming. It would be moving from the inside to the outside to off the plate. It was just amazing.
And go ahead, Bob.
Mike and I had 6 shutouts involved in that run for Oral. Mike caught 3 of them, and so did I. And it was just, you talk to Mike, and Mike says, man, I'll tell you what, he's unhittable. And he did things to beat the Mets, and he pitched a great ball game on his own. And then the next day, he just goes down to the bullpen to close out the next game and walks in there and says, I'm warming up because I'm coming in this game. He just got through throwing a 9-inning game before. Yeah. And so he went out there and he saved the ball game on top of it, and kept us in the race. And then the World Series, it wasn't even tough.
Hold on. I'm going to get to World. Bob, you had something you were going to say. Go ahead, Bob.
I just want to say, in all the years I've followed baseball, and I've been a Dodger fan my whole life, but that, I believe, as Rick alluded to, is the worst team in baseball history to win a world championship.
Absolutely.
Franklin Stubbs,
and we laughed at that.
With Danny Heap and Franklin Stubbs and John Shelby. I mean, you talk, I mean, it was an absolute miracle. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Bob Costas said that on television. Yeah. Bob Costas says, we are the worst team in baseball history on paper, playing the best team in baseball. On paper, and we beat them in 5 games.
Do me a favor. Tell me also, I think you were in St. Louis. Kirk Gibson and Pedro Martinez, they get no fight. And the way I heard it, Gibby goes into Lasorda. He goes, it's either him or me. You got to get rid of one of us. That night, Fred Clare trades for John Tudor and gets 1-on-1. Guerrero for Tudor. Any truth to that story at all?
That is true.
Wow.
That is true. That's the way I heard it, It was just one of those things, Gibby had it going that year. It started in spring training when they put the eye black inside his hat. Jesse Orozco did that, and then he put the hat on, didn't realize when he took the hat off, he had a big black streak all across his forehead. And
It's so stupid. It's so stupid,
Yeah,
Rick.
yeah.
It's stupid, but it's part of baseball. It's what 5-year-olds do, and you're a bunch of 5-year-olds doing that every day with
but
one
I
another.
think Gibby felt at that time that it was time to say something about a losing attitude and a winning attitude. Now, Gibby was enamored by every player on the ball club. You know, he played the game hard as anybody could play it.
Yep.
But at that point, he didn't know everybody, but he wanted them to know him. He came there to win. It didn't matter what anybody said about us being the worst team in baseball. He was going to do things that he felt was the right way to do them, and he established himself as a team leader like that. And so, you know, we all kind of agreed with him, especially those of us who had been around for a long time. We knew, hey, you know what? He just shook this team up, and I like that. You know, he shook them all up, and they didn't know how to take him for a while. But Gibby was as hard a player as I have ever seen in the game, whether it be on television or not. He played the game hard. And that one at bat he had in the World Series just changed the table and what happened, you know, to this ball club. And everybody stayed focused. And it just goes to show you that don't take any team for granted, because even the worst team on paper in history will kick your ass if you can't get the job done the way they do. So
well, I got to meet Kurt at, of all places, Morton Anderson's Hall of Fame induction in Canton, Ohio.
Yeah.
They were teammates together at Michigan State. And so I said to Morton, I go, why is Kurt here for you? He goes, dude, that guy was a baller. He was such a good baseball player and a football player as well. And we've been friends ever since we were Sparties together. All right, here's the at-bat.
Yeah.
I on purpose, this picture, how feeble Kirk Gibson was. Now, the story is that he told Tommy, what, in the 7th, 8th, 9th, I'm getting ready, I'm going to warm up. He couldn't move. It's his only at bat in the whole doggone World Series. But he fouls this one pitch off, and I don't know if it hit him or not, but it rolls down first base. And if that's a fair ball, we're not talking about it anymore. And it was only foul by an inch. McGuire takes it off the chalk almost. And look how bad he looks right here. And he can't move. His legs are gone. One knee is not working. The other hamstring is all wrapped up. Give me just your impression when you see this guy go up to the plate. Is there any part of you, Rick, that goes, you got to be kidding me?
You know what? We as players believed he was going to get a base hit and tie the ball game. We never had the idea, because if you watch Dennis Eckersley, and the things that I picked up was that he couldn't get around on the fastball. And he just kept battling up there, you know.
He fouled
the ball off,
yes,
keeping himself in the at-bat, you know, but he couldn't get around on a fastball. Now, we had a scout, Mel Didier, who gave us a scouting report at the start of the series on Dennis Eckersley coming in against left-handed hitters, 3-2 count. He's going to throw what we call a backdoor slider, a slider for the outside corner, off the plate, breaking and catching the corner for a strikeout. And I think Gibby was aware of that. I don't think he thought he was going to get as good a pitch as he got to hit, but it was up just a hair and just enough for him to get the bat on. Sliders are not as fast as fastballs are, so it enabled him to get that bat out a little bit in front of home plate. When he made contact, game over.
Yeah.
It almost looked like a one-handed swing.
Yes.
And when it went to dead left field, or right field, and then we knew right away he had just done the impossible. And, you know, he had just enough left in his legs to walk up to home plate and get around the bases, because I don't think he realized the way he ran the bases was faster than we expected he'd be able to do it. But
if Madison
Baumgartner,
if Madison Baumgartner were on the mound, he would have thrown the next pitch and beamed somebody. But yeah, Kurt didn't get around the bases very fast at all. Can I tell you a real quick story? My neighbor is Jay Howell, and Jay was warming up in the bullpen, and he was telling Mark Cressy, he goes, "Cressy, get down. What are you doing? I've got to warm up. I think he singled, which means we may have tied the game, and I'm going to go in next inning. I got to close it out." He had no idea that he had hit the home run in there until after they had opened the gate and all the guys from the bullpen got to stream out onto the field and congratulate him afterwards. I don't know if you and Jay have talked about that at all, but that's one of the fun stories.
Jay and I have a story that Jay ended up writing a book about. I was a chapter in his book at the end of that World Series. I know the one game that they won was the third game, I think, or the fourth game. Anyway, they won it on a home run by McGuire.
In Oakland, yes. Yeah.
In Oakland. I sat up on the outside corner, and Jay had been throwing that fastball down and away the entire season, and nobody could even come close to it.
Yeah.
When he hit that outside corner, he just had a terrific season throwing that pitch. He let that one float in. And one thing we noticed about those hitters, all the right-handers would come in and they'd open their stance up real wide so that they could get their hands inside the ball when it was coming middle in. Okay. And this ball happened to be up. He made a really bad pitch with the fastball, and McGuire hits it out of the ballpark, and they win their first game. Okay, Jay comes in the last game. Not the last game, but the next day. And we've got a 2-run lead, I think it was. Yeah, there was 2 guys on, and McGuire was coming up again. And I called for the fastball away, and he calls me out to the mound. He goes, "Were you watching the game yesterday?" I go, "Yeah, I was watching the game." He goes, "McGuire just hit that fastball up into the seats for a game winner, and now I got 2 men on, and he's up there again. He might hit another home run, and I'd lose 2 games in a row." I said, "Jay, you didn't throw a very good fastball. You threw the fastball middle in where he could hit it. Throw the fastball down on the outside corner, and let's get this guy out of here." He goes, "Okay." He throws the fastball down on the outside corner, and McGuire reaches for it because he can't get to it, and he pops it up, and we win the ball game. And he goes, "You know what?" He says, "Thank you very much." I go, "For what?" He says, "Reminding me that I'm a pretty darn good pitcher when I make my pitches." Yeah. And I said, "Yeah, you're pretty good. You've been good all year. You will." And he wrote a book about it. He was so happy that I made him throw his best pitch, because I said, "This is what got you to the big leagues. This is what's going to get you a championship right here."
Yeah.
Sure as hell. He popped him up, and we laughed about it a couple weeks ago when he was at Dodger Stadium. We were celebrating the World Series, and Jay remembered that, and we hugged it up. and during the ball game up in one of the suites as we were enjoying everybody watching highlights of that World Series.
I said, "Jay, what were your best pitches?" He said, "I had 3: fast, faster, and drop dead heaver." That meant that his arm was going to fall off if he threw it any harder than that. And he also told me, he says, "I've had human urine thrown on me in an Oakland tunnel where some guy had relieved himself and threw a bucket of that stuff on him after he gave up a home run or something like that." He goes, so he looks at the humility of all of this in a different way than all of us. But he hurt his neck from having to look at that ball leave the park as quickly as it did there in game 3. But for you to go back out there and go, absolutely, Rick, for you to go, throw me your best pitch. Doggone it, do it, and let's get out of here. And for him,
throw it on the outside corner. That's all you got to do. And he did.
Where I want you to put it, and we'll be just fine. I mean, it's just amazing how simple the game can be sometimes when you turn into it. Here's a shot of you and Jay's behind you. He doesn't even want to give a high five to you. He wants to give it to the infielders. What the heck's wrong with
It
that
doesn't
guy?
matter who he gave it to. He was able to give it.
But for you to, to win it the way that you guys did with a bunch of goofballs, and nobody believed you could. Even Bob Costas said it wasn't going to happen. But Hatcher had a nice series. Tracy Woodson had a good series.
Oh man, everybody contributed. Everybody. Man,
Mickey Hatcher.
I was just going to say, Mark Wahlberg is doing that documentary of the Pony League team that I played on. I'll tell you, somebody's got to do a movie about that entire season. It'll be the best baseball story ever told.
100%.
You don't see the good ones, the Babe Ruth movies and all the great players the Yankees had, they made movies about. And, there'll just never be another baseball movie like it if somebody does a good job. I want Mark Wahlberg to be the guy.
100%. Because people relate to losers, and it was a bunch of losers that won.
Well, now I don't know if it's that bad.
No, you weren't a loser, but I mean, most of those guys were.
Maybe Fred Clare didn't get the best players at every position that he could have gotten, but he got the right players for everyone.
He gets
Mickey Hatcher, 2 home runs. He didn't hit a home run in the World Series.
Yeah.
I mean, in the season at all. He hits 2 of them in the playoffs. That's rising to the occasion right there.
Mickey ran around the bases so fast that nobody knew he'd actually hit the home run. They thought it was a triple, an extended triple.
I know it. I'd never seen anybody.
You know what's hilarious? Fred Clare defends that team. I said, Fred, that's the worst. And he goes, no, what are you talking about? That was a good team. I think he got pissed off when I said, that's the worst team in baseball history. He took it like a personal insult.
It was amazing. I played 27 years of pro ball, and I played 24 of them in the big leagues. I have never, ever seen a team contribute as much to winning as every guy on that ball club has a story to tell about something he did to help us win ball games.
Well, and this, of course, not the picture, but one of the many. This is an iconic baseball photo, right? The little engine that could, and you're out there with Bulldog after you get the last out there in Oakland. I mean, what's going through your? I know you're not thinking about the picture.
It was a miracle. It was a miracle that this team could do what they did, because I know it's never been done in the history of. I've seen since I got to the big leagues in 1969. I have never seen anything like that. I've seen good teams dominate all season long. I've seen some teams that played really good, but were iffy in a World Series that ended up winning. But this team, nobody gave us a chance. Not one person would have bet on this team to win. If they had, they'd own the ball club by now.
How about not one Hall of Famer on the team as a player? Now, when do you see a World Series team with not one Hall of Famer on it?
Oh, man. This is true. There wasn't, but there was something about these guys and their approach to the game. They were knowledgeable. They weren't crazy. They weren't big drinkers. There was no drug users. There was nothing. Everybody went out and did his own thing to keep himself in mental and physical shape all season. Nobody wanted to let this ball club down. And we had enough fire and piss and vinegar on that ball club. When they said play ball, we were dedicated to winning that game. And it didn't matter who got the opportunity. We had just enough talent to make it across the finish line. And that's the way it was. Nobody could ever say anything bad about any one person on that team. Everybody contributed. And when they got their opportunities, they did it. And they did it the right way.
I asked Jay Howell right before we went on the air. I said, "Hey, we're gonna have Rick on, and is there any story that you have? Did he ever?" I was teasing with him. I said, "Did he ever leave early to beat the traffic at Dodger Stadium?" Because remember when Gibby hit the home run, there were people in the audience or in the parking lot. You see the brake lights that go on, and I wanted to just have fun with him because I know what Jay is like. And he goes, "No, Rick knew what he was doing when he was behind the plate. He was great at the mind games with the hitters, and he was incredibly confident. Pitchers need that, especially relief pitchers. So in a way, his tribute to you through a simple text is that I would say the same thing. Pitchers were grateful to have someone like you on the other end of the battery. So well done, Rick.
Thank you very much. Who said that? Did you say from the beginning?
That was Jay. That was Jay Howell.
Oh, Jay Howell. Oh, yeah, definitely.
And you're never going to get anything like that at a Jay when you're talking to a man to man. You know that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I knew Jay for just that season and played against him, but I learned a lot. There was just so much heart out there every single day. We're down 4 or 5. Everybody's still laughing we'll get them. Don't worry, we'll get them. And the next thing you know, the game's over and we win. Tommy Lasorda had so much fun that year. It was crazy. We won ball games that nobody would ever give you a chance of winning. And that's why I want to see it reenacted in a movie because it'll be the best baseball picture ever.
It really would, from a historical standpoint. There are so many reasons why that is true. And then you just follow up the 89 season with and then 90, you get nothing. I'm sorry. Nothing even close to that. Playoff appearances and all that kind of stuff. But you got everything you could out of it. You got one more year in Milwaukee, and then you end with another year in 92 in Baltimore again. What was that like being able to go back? Did that close things out for you in a way?
With Baltimore?
Please, yeah.
No.
Okay.
I didn't like what happened, and I said so, and I retired. I went there expecting to play because I could still play. And even when the number one catcher had broke his thumb or something early on in the season, I didn't get an opportunity. Of all that time, I started one ball game all season, and I got 9 at bats. And so I felt like, well, they want me to quit, and that's one thing I'm never, ever going to do. I'm not going to quit. I just sat there every day, and called it a career at the end. That was it. But I never thought that would happen, especially in Baltimore, but it did. Yeah. And you know what? I don't hold a grudge against anybody or anything about it. It's just something that happened. And I had enough accolades in my career to be happy every day the rest of my life.
Well, plus you announced a radio announcer for him for 15 years.
Yeah, I announced for him for 15 years. And I had Tom Davis was my setup guy, and he was just the best and the best professional that you have ever seen behind a microphone. And he made doing the pre and post game shows fun because he knew what to talk about. He knew everything.
Get awards? Didn't that get awards? Your post game show?
Oh yeah, it did, and we were happy about that. But we just did the same thing. We showed up every day at the office at the right time, and we just made it fun for the fans, and that's what means a lot to me about Baltimore. Is we had great fans at Old Memorial Stadium, and we had great fans there at Camden Yard. And so I'll never forget how great they really were to me and to all of the Orioles, actually. And we rewarded them with a lot of good championship seasons.
Hey, do you mind me asking? I'm not sure of this, Rick, so please forgive me for just being blunt. Were you behind the mic when Cal broke the record?
No, I wasn't. I was managing AAA ball for the Dodgers, I think, that year.
Okay.
Yeah,
but in the booth, there's a certain part where you're going to teach the fans something. You're also going to have a little bit of fun, I think. Do you get to have both of those, or was it just really stoic and very professional, or did you get to be yourself and kind of let your personality come out when you were in the booth?
Always got to just be myself. I think I had a lot of fun with the fans. I had a lot of fun with the players. I like to think I had fun with the people that owned it. Peter Angelos and I got along very well.
Except
And
Bill Sudeikis.
as a matter of fact, he gave me the managing job 3 times.
What?
Yes, he did.
Does that mean that you got fired twice, or
No, I didn't get fired, but I would say in a couple of days, somebody talked Peter out of doing it. And I don't know. I would always say, well, who is it, Peter? He said, I can't tell you. I can't tell you. But he said, he called me in the office and he said, hey, you're going to manage the ball club next year. And I said, man, that's great. 2 days later, he called me up and, Rick, I'm sorry. But they made me change my mind. I said, who's they? He said he would never give them up.
yeah.
But 3 times it happened. I had a witness, was an attorney friend of his, when the 3rd time that he gave me the managing job. And so
It might have been
it
Bill.
didn't happen, and that's okay, because Peter was good to me all the time. So I can't hold that against him.
What keeps you busy now, Rick? A guy that gets the chance to play some golf, get a conversation going with a guy like Bob Case. I do want to say thank you. A buddy of mine that played at Crespi, he was a basketball player, says at our year-end banquet that we had, Rick Dempsey was the keynote speaker to come in. So I think it's fantastic that you get to share some great memories that you have, whether it be on the diamond or through high school, the chance that you get to give back to some of the kids and just say, hey, hard work pays off, stay in shape, be on time, and some good things can happen to you. So thank you, my friend Jeff Thackleberry, who remembers you being a keynote speaker and just all kinds of wonderful things. But what keeps you busy now, aside from making sure that the little lady gets the trash taken out, that the walls are painted, and that the car is full of gas?
Well, I have a baseball school and academy back in Baltimore, and I'm there quite often. Sometimes as much as 3 times a month, I'll fly in there and put on a clinic and do some things. So I still remember
Do
how
you
great
still
the
get
fans-
in a 2-point stance down like yo? Do you get down
No.
there? Come
No.
on. Bob and
No.
I are thinking all creaky bones and everything. We couldn't do that, but you're in. Do you sit on a
Well,
bucket then? Do you do it from a bucket?
no. I fell. I was only on the disabled list in 27 years, 2 times. Once
Yep.
As a
when
captain, unbelievable.
a pitcher threw at me and hit me because I swung too hard at a 2-ball no strike pitch.
Don't do that.
And
Don't
Bo
do
Jackson hit me at home plate and broke my thumb. And the only good thing about letting Bo Jackson hit me at 235 pounds and me at 167 was I held him to less yards than Bosworth did.
that. Yes, you did. Hey, Bo, at all the weight that you have and all that, running about a 4.15, 4.18 40. That was what he was timed at one point at Auburn.
Well, that might be pushing it a little bit.
Well, he ran a 4.19 in the combine, so he was something else. Oh my gosh!
Bo, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about me running that fast. There's
No,
way.
no, you're still running a 4.30 mile, right?
Yeah.
But he's running a 4.19 40. So
Yeah.
we'll pay all due respects to that.
God bless him. He was a great, great athlete. Whew.
Yeah. Well, when you get your book together, you get to write about some of the amazing history from 1969 to 1992 or 3. Are you kidding me? The amount of amazing things that took place in the game and world championships that you were a part of, that you won, that you lost, everything that's a bit of it. It's been a heck of a life, hasn't it?
It really has been. You know, I've got the good Lord upstairs to thank for keeping me healthy enough to make it through 27 years, 24 in the big leagues. And I have been given a lot of accolades, you know, some of them I didn't deserve, but that's what team is all about. And it's been a special career. I still have a little fire left in me. And so, you know, I don't like what's happening in baseball today to a certain extent. There are some very, very good players in the game today, strong, capable, I get to watch Otani all the time, and he is amazing what this guy can do. But the game has changed in a lot of respects, and there's not as much focus on defense anymore as there was, keeping the double play in order and the reasons for all that kind of thing happening. Who the heck knows? And now they want to bring in AI or something to call balls and strikes and everything. It's just, I don't know. I know umpires were not always kind to me and everything, but the game can't do without them. It's part of the game. Is everybody makes mistakes, and I'm not above that myself. So, but I like umpires out there, even though I didn't like some of the umpires and they didn't like me. But hey, as far as baseball goes, I love them all.
Yeah.
So whatever.
Just amazing. And well, thank you for giving us. I know there's a lot more out here. We'd have another show easily to do. We could go over the new game, or at least the game that is today. And I'm sure we missed a few things. Bob, thank you so much for the invitation to Rick. What a great joy.
Thank you, Harper. Thank you, Bob.
Let me just say this. I
Yeah.
feel the last 2+ hours that I've had a walk through baseball history. Now think about it. I forget, as well as I know Rick, I forget all the players he touched, played with, teammates, played against. I mean, it's the history of baseball. If you Cal Ripken, this guy, I never think about all that. I mean, it's unbelievable. I just see Rick as a guy that lives in a mansion on top of a hill overlooking Westlake Village. But no, he's had and I'm going to just say this. If I were doing 10 years in the joint, I would want Rick, and I'm not gay, I would want him as my bunkmate. You got it? Because the time would fly. I would learn. You know how much I've learned today? Hey, I'm a baseball whack job, and I've learned a lot today.
Yeah.
I mean, I really have. And I love, the intensity of this guy, which to me, if you summed it up in one word, his intensity is what made him great. From a little kid at Crespi High School, from a little leaguer, that never wanting to quit, sitting in Fred Claire's office, that says it all. I mean, there was a no quit in him. And he's, why do you think he's a scratch golf? He was the golf champion at North Ranch Country Club, the champion.
Yeah, that did happen one time. I don't know how, but it did. Yeah.
Anyway, it was my honor to be here, and I really.
Well, thank you, Bob, and Harper. Thank you very much, and it's pretty special to have someone like you who spent that much time in football to be interested in what I've done.
He knows his baseball. That's what I can't believe. The guy knows baseball.
It's pretty nice. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, what's funny for me is that Bob wants you to commit enough crimes to be put in a federal penitentiary so he can spend 10 years with you. All right, that's a true friend. I'll help you get thrown in jail. We know a bad bank robber. There's already one out there, so we can maybe we.
You knew a few guys back east. It sounded like.
They're probably all dead now anyway. So.
Well, yeah, whatever. We'll get that. A small kid from Fayetteville, Tennessee, making it to the major leagues and staying there for almost 2.5 decades, 27 years in professional baseball. There's certainly a story to tell, and we're so glad that we got to hear a part of that today. Thank you, Rick Dempsey, for that. The Minnesota Twins, the New York Yankees, the Cleveland Indians, the Los Angeles Dodgers, certainly, and the Milwaukee Brewers, thank you as well. 2-time world champion, MVP of the 1983 World Series. Thank you so much for being a part of it. And we want to thank you for being a part of the show as well. This has been 100 Yards of Football, and we're talking all baseball today. So we appreciate you being a part of it. For Bob Case, I'm Harper LeBel, and for Rick Dempsey, we want to say thank you for being a faithful watcher and viewer of the show. 100 Yards of Football certainly is much better with you. So have a fantastic rest of your day, everybody. We appreciate it all.